Welcome into episode 400 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian D. Felice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget, Scott, I'm going to stop right there because
400.
episode 400, and we started at 42. It's been I'll speak for myself, it's been a absolute blast, but it's crazy how fast the time goes.
It is. And yeah, it's weird because we've kind of seen this number coming, and 400 is obviously a big one, and yet it's like you're just in the flow of the season and they just keep piling up. And it has been awesome. I can also say I've really enjoyed it. Hopefully we have 400 more in us, and keep it going.
I remember when me and Brian were sitting in the studio back when Brian used to come into the studio. Actually, truthfully, I don't really even go in anymore either, except for Sunday skate. But Brian and
Which
I
is back, by the way.
It's back. It's coming
Sunday,
9 to 11 every Sunday now until the Bruins get eliminated. So,
Bridget Prue, Scott McLaughlin, Andrew Raycroft, and Brian in the car.
Yeah, Brian in the car.
That's right. And Maria from Watertown calling.
And Maria from Watertown. And I know one time last year I was like, she hasn't called in. Is she okay? But so me and Brian were just sitting in the Red Sox studio going, maybe we should ask Ken about the podcast and see if it'd be okay for us to take it over, because it had gone dead. And we're like, well, maybe we'll, and he said yes. And he said, but you got to bring this guy, Scott McLaughlin, on. And we were like, oh, I don't know about that. We actually hadn't met you, Scott, until this. So
true. Yeah. Cause I really wasn't doing much related to anything on air. So
yeah, I knew Brian, but the first time we met Scott, we were like, I don't know if we like this guy. No, I'm just kidding.
I knew Scott was running the website, so I figured he'd be a good guy to have on our side.
Yep. I was like, I felt like it took me a while to figure out Scott's sense of humor, but we got there.
I'm still learning it. But Bridget and Scott, we have a Bruins game to discuss, and they fell to the Golden Knights 4-3 on the heels of losing to the Rangers in regulation. So a couple of games back to back where the Bruins, they had leads in the third period and weren't able to salvage a single point. And let's just start with that. And Scott, we'll go to you with your opening shift first.
Sure. Yeah. So while the Bruins were in the midst of blowing that third period lead, this was obviously a national TV game on ABC, and Emily Kaplan, ESPN NHL insider, was working ringside, and during that third period had an interesting report about the Bruins' approach to the trade deadline. And she said that the Bruins are an X-factor team that is listening to a lot right now, both adding and subtracting. She added that they're getting a bunch of calls on Trent Frederic, Morgan Geekie, and even Brandon Carlo. She also addressed Brad Marchand, who obviously a lot of people are wondering about as a pending unrestricted free agent, and said that other teams that she has talked to don't believe Boston is willing to trade him. But I think we could have said the same thing about Mikko Rantanen 2 weeks ago, so you never know. Obviously referring to the Colorado Avalanche trading away Rantanen to Carolina. This actually, so I had not seen this other report before Emily's report, but Jimmy Murphy over at rg.org had reported something similar earlier Saturday, also mentioning Frederic, Geekie, and Carlo by name. And he quoted an NHL executive who said, I know they've looked like both buyers and sellers lately, and I wouldn't be surprised if they wind up doing both. So obviously a lot to get into here, and it's hard not to feel like the Bruins going into this break the way that they did would certainly seem to sway them one way over the other. It's it's a pretty awful look to have back-to-back third period leads and end up with 0 points in those two games. We've talked about some of these guys before. I've talked about the possibility of buying and selling and what that could look like. So I think there's some juicy stuff to get into there.
Yeah, definitely. I was kind of surprised when she came out in the middle of the game and said that. I was like, oh, this is like real journalism going on right now. Not as a broadcaster, normally we're just like talking about, da da da, whatever, something the coach said. But then she came out with some actually like really interesting stuff. And I think it's not surprising the Frederic and Geekie stuff, but I think Carlo was probably the name on there that's a little bit more so because he's not he's not like Frederic on an expiring contract so that one's definitely interesting. We'll get into that. My opening shift is actually not Bruins related. I wanted to make sure to say this like off the top because so my broadcast partner at Providence, his name is Mike Logan. He just had his 1000th game with Providence, which I just wanted to say congrats to him about that. And people probably, if you don't know Mike Logan, he's been at Providence.
And Bridget, just to clarify, Providence College, right? Not
Providence College.
Providence
Yes,
Bruins.
sorry. Providence College, where I've been working for the last 5 or 6 years now. And he helped me get that job, and he's helped me a bunch in my career. So I just wanted to say, give him his props for being a great guy and being a great broadcaster and someone that's helped me out a lot. I even last year at one point was going through like a tough patch, like dealing with a certain company, and like he sent me flowers and because I called him crying. And so like he's just been there for me and he's been great. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned him off the top and just say congrats on 1000 games, which I was there for 999. But I missed 1,000 because Hockey East sent me to UConn, and then I got stuck. In Connecticut, and I was like, why couldn't I have just been in Providence, which is like 20 minutes from my house that night? But anyway, that's my opening shift.
Well, congratulations to Mike, and I think 1,000 games speaks in and of itself. But I think the fact that you, Bridget, were willing to come on and shout him out speaks to because I don't know who Mike is, but that speaks to who he is as a person, and that's, I think, a bigger compliment than you can say about his game total broadcasting. So that's congratulations to him. My opening shift is also non-Bruins related, but it is regarding Four Nations, which is why the NHL is at break right now. And we're going to get into this at some point in the episode, but I just wanted to mention off the top that I find it a little bit interesting, some of the mixed, I don't even want to call it reviews because it hasn't happened yet, some of the mixed feelings about the mixed anticipation or lack thereof regarding Four Nations. I think there's a lot of people out there that are really excited to see international hockey at the NHL level for the first time since 2016. And of course, it's not an entire bracket. As the tournament title insinuates, there's Four Nations involved. You have the US, Sweden, Canada, and Finland. So it's omitting Russia, which there's political reasons for that, whether people agree with it or not. It just is what it is at this point, I guess. But obviously, Czech Republic is not in there. So no David Pastrnak, no Marty Necas, and others. There's no Leon Draisaitl.
No Pavel Zacha.
No Pavel Zacha, correct. Yeah. Well, with all due respect to Pavel, I think Marty Necas is probably a better Czech player, so that's why he came to my mind. But,
maybe they could have brought David Krejci out of retirement.
That's true. That's true. But look, obviously people sit here and say they don't really have much interest in a tournament with no history, which I hear that and I say, well, the teams have a lot of history. Like who cares about the tournament lack of history? But a bigger gripe is some of the best players in the world aren't there. There's no Leon Draisaitl for Germany, he's the leading scorer in the NHL, one of the best players in the world. No, as I said, no Pastrnak and others. So I understand some of the stance of people that are like, this tournament's not an entire best on best, and there's no arguments there. But I'm still looking forward to it, and I think it's something that can be a really nice appetizer for what's only a year away, which is the 2026 Winter Olympics, which will be a full bracket. And then Marty Walsh mentioned on the Greg Hill show that they plan on having a World Cup of Hockey every 2 years for the next decade. So, starting this time next year, we will have international best on best full brackets, and maybe Russia's involved at that point as well. So it's complete best on best. But until then, I think there's a ton of pride on the line and bragging rights between these four proud nations. And I'm looking forward to the hockey, and we can talk about that as we go along too, and your guys' feelings on Four Nations as well.
Yeah, I mean, we might as well start there actually. So yeah, the plan going forward is Olympics and World Cup alternating every 2 years. So Olympics in 26, World Cup of Hockey 28, Olympics again in 30, World Cup of Hockey again in 32. And if they stick to that rotation, like that would be awesome. That would be something that hockey has not had. And yeah, as far as like like this tournament doesn't have any history or tradition or whatever, it doesn't take much to get it started. Like once you throw these great teams out there and you tune in, you check it out, and you remember how great this hockey is, like you don't really care what the name of the tournament is. Like I mean, if you think about some of the most memorable international tournaments in hockey history, the Summit Series of the 70s between Canada and the Soviet Union didn't have any history until they did it. And then it immediately became one of the most memorable hockey tournaments ever. The Canada Cup in the 80s had no history until they started doing it. And the 1987 Canada Cup is like widely considered like the best hockey tournament ever played. So the 2016 World Cup of Hockey, they hadn't had a World Cup since 1996. And by the way, that was the first one. 96 was the first one billed as the World Cup of Hockey. And that was extremely memorable because it was the United States' first breakthrough on the international stage since the 1980 Olympics. I just like you don't need history. You don't need it to have like name recognition. The name recognition is the star players who are going to be out there. So yeah, I'm definitely excited about this, and I think a lot of hockey fans are going to get more excited once it starts and once they tune in.
And it's also in Boston. Like people around here can go see it with their own eyes. I have no idea how expensive the tickets are. Scott and I both have a credential.
I was looking yesterday, and I think like as of Sunday, I know the championship game, the cheapest tickets were like $195. It was like all resale market. I think there was still some slightly more affordable for USA, Sweden, and Canada, Finland, the first two games, but ticket sales had been slow to start from what I had heard, but it certainly seems like they picked up.
Yeah, I feel like people were so like regular season oriented until this past like week that makes sense kind of because it's kind of one of those things. It's like, all right, we can't wait for it, but well, we still have time to figure out what we're doing. And so hopefully people from around here can get some tickets and go if they want to. The only unfortunate thing I will say, Montreal has the US Canada match, so there's a chance we get one in the championship here in Boston, but there's also a chance it's not those two teams. So I would love to watch US Canada with my own eyes. We are not going to Montreal. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out with either of our schedules. So yeah, that one's I'm going to have FOMO during that game that I'm not there because I love Montreal and I want to see that. But hopefully we get US Canada for the final. Selfishly, that's what I would like. I'm sure a lot of people are hoping for that in Boston.
Yeah, but by the way, just for the hell of it, I checked tickets for that game as well up in Montreal, and the cheapest tickets were over $400.
Wow.
I'm actually surprised it wasn't more than that.
I think there's a decent chance that we do get Canada, US, and Boston. I think when you look at the depth of both, I mean, all four teams involved have tremendous high end skill. But I think the deeper down the lineups you get, I think that's where Canada and US separates a bit, especially in the back end. So, yeah, I think hopefully you get that wish, Bridget. But in any event, like another thing I hear people say is
Sidney Crosby went to practice with Team Canada, so that's a good sign. Because that I was worried about that. Because obviously it's not best on best when you even with Canada when you don't have Sidney Crosby, who's the captain.
Unfortunately, the United States did lose Quinn Hughes, which is a huge blow. Obviously he would have been their number one defenseman, would have played a ton of minutes, I think. Power play one. Just kind of like an irreplaceable skill set. But US will still have a good decor. There's just, Quinn Hughes is like him and Cale Makar are the 2 of 2 in terms of like that offensive dynamo from the back end, in addition to just good all around play.
They're gonna hide their cards. U.S. gets to hide their cards until the Olympics with Quinn Hughes back there. So that'll be an added element this time next year. But one other thing people mention that they don't think it's going to be worth viewing, which again I just completely disagree, is they say they question what the intensity level is going to be, and they think it's going to be. I hear the word gimmicky out there. It's gimmicky. It's like an all-star replacement. These guys are going to be out there.
It's way better than an all-star game. Tell me how much you have interest in watching the fucking NHL all-star game.
But that's kind of the narrative I see out there is people think it's going to be like a glorified pond hockey game, and I think people are going to be anybody who thinks that. I just think they're going to be incredibly surprised by the intensity level because like mid-season international hockey happens with the Olympics. Like people say, oh, guys don't want to get hurt. That's what happens in the Olympics. Like there's no lack of intensity there. So I just think that there's a lot of not a lot, but I see some naysayers, and I'm hoping that they're pleasantly surprised as this unfolds.
These guys have been chomping at the bit to play international hockey. Like obviously they played in the summer, the World Cup. Czech Republic won, but like this is different. A lot of that tournament guys are still in the NHL playoffs, so they're like the Stanley Cup's going on, so they don't have full teams and whatnot. So yeah, they're chomping at the bit for this. They're very excited. I know McAvoy is one of the guys we've talked to about it. So excited to go. Oh, this is kind of a fashion segment, but did we all see Jeremy Swayman's helmet? Did we see that? Thank you.
Yeah.
Did we see Ricky Bobby is on there? So Will Ferrell made it on the helmet.
I did. Yeah, I did see that. A little kind of mishmash is like all over the place, but I think I liked it. I also liked Ottinger's had the Statue of Liberty, but the Statue of Liberty as an otter. So that was a nice personal touch.
I like it. I mean, Swayman has the Montreal and Boston skylines on the back because that's the two areas that it's happening. But no, obviously the one that drew my attention was Ricky Bobby, and it said shake and bake. I feel like an opportunity was missed here to write if you ain't first, you're last. Because that makes more sense for a tournament like this if you're not first, you're last. But shake and bake works, I guess. So I'm a huge Will Ferrell fan, and I love Talladega Nights. So I liked it, but I didn't understand it 100%. But I liked it.
While we have this banner up, do you guys want a quick ranking on the jerseys 4-1? I mean, I think the U.S. is none of the jerseys are terrible. I think a couple of them like could be much better. I don't understand why the United States deviates from the actual color blue in our flag. They go to this navy color, and I just think that the flag's blue is lighter than that, and we all enjoy that red, white, and blue combination better. And then Sweden, which has a patented like royal blue color in their sweaters and their flag, have a navy color this time around. Otherwise, I think theirs are sharp. But what do you guys think of the uniforms?
Yeah, I think Canada has the best. I really liked Canada's. Sweden is probably still number 2 just because it's a classic design and I love the yellow. But you're right, like they went too dark on the blue in it. And USA, Finland I'm kind of like take it or leave it. Not really impressed with either one.
By the way, McAvoy is wearing a different number. He's not wearing 73. He's going back to his 25, which is what he wore for juniors for Team USA back in the day. So if you're watching and you're like, wait, why is, where's 73? He's not wearing 73.
Yeah, he said that 25 was always his number, but obviously when he said Brandon Carlo beat him by a year to get it in Boston. So
true. That's a fact. Well, he can get it back for this tournament because Carlo is not playing. But so my thoughts on the jerseys, I love the detail in like the texture detail in Canada and Sweden. They have like the crowns are textured, like you'd have to see them. They're like raised in different spots as a pattern that's raised. And same with Canada, the middle stripe has like different details in it. That's a different texture. Those I thought looked really nice. And then I say US third and then Finland fourth. So
We're gonna get to the Bruins. I promise everybody listening.
maybe at some point.
Just one last question. It feels like at the World Junior level, the U.S. has it perfect. They have the perfect uniform, like the 1960 whites and blues. Why can't we just see that at I'm hoping we see that at the Olympics and future World Cups of hockey. I'm not sure why with these international, like, professional tournaments, they just go to these shit ski uniforms. Like, this one's not even that bad. I remember, like, past Olympics, you guys remember I was like, "These are terrible."
Yeah.
But they have it perfect at the World Junior level. Just use those.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I'm sure part of it is like they want different different jerseys every time so they can sell something different, but yeah, no, like they have a classic look that they can and should just stick to, and I don't know that they refuse to. But yeah, I don't know if you guys had any other thoughts or if we want to transition to the Bruins here.
Yeah, I think we can transition. I think let's set the stage as we go into this Four Nations break. Let's just reiterate where they are. So, how many games do they have left? 25, 26, something like that?
25.
Okay. So they got 25 games to go in the Atlantic Division, both on points and point percentage. They're 6th out of 8. In the wild card race, there's 2 teams ahead of them on points, 3 teams ahead of them on points percentage. They're 10th in the East on points, 11th points percentage, 19th in the league points, 20th points percentage, 25th in goal differential, 30th in the power play, 25th in the penalty kill. And we have 25 games to go. So that's just a quick reset as to where the team is. And Bridge and Scott, take it away wherever you want to go with it.
Well, you had multiple chances here for the players to at least feel a little better about themselves going into the break, to give management something to think about, and to finish with the 2 games that they finished with is just like, it's so deflating. It's so devastating to, again, just to make a case that you deserve, um that you deserve like these 7 games coming out of the break before the deadline, that you deserve any sort of investment, any sort of belief. And like Brian, you highlight all those numbers and it's like, yeah, we would, winning one of these games one way or the other, like, wouldn't have dramatically changed those numbers. But like the team would have felt better and you would have thought, okay, maybe, hit the pause button. Let's see how they come out of break. And now it feels like even if they come out of the break like with 3 straight wins, it's like, how much is that going to change? First off, I think we all feel like they're probably not going to do that because they don't like that they haven't done it. But even if they do, it's like it's hard to ignore these just like absolutely gut-wrenching valleys that this team keeps having over and over again, where it's the same story. Like, it's the same breakdowns on the penalty kill. Vegas goes 2 for 4 on the power play on Saturday.
I mean, count the one that get called back for goalie interference too. They scored on that power play twice.
Yeah, like like, I don't know how you guys felt, but like, even just watching it, like, even when it gets called back, I'm like, they're probably going to give up another one anyways. And and just some of the same mistakes, like on that go ahead goal, it's that they don't take away the passing lane from Eichel to Hurdle into the bumper, even though everyone knows that's what Vegas wants to do. The broadcast mentioned it every time Vegas is on the power play, and yet the Bruins leave that passing lane open. The tying goal where McAvoy and Wallstrom both go to Eichel and no one picks up Shea Theodore sneaking behind them. It's like we've seen that before. There was it was just like a couple games before that, or maybe like a week before that, that Morgan Geekie on the back check went to the same guy that Zadorov already had covered. And like, same thing, it allowed someone just to sneak in behind them and the pass gets through. And you just can't keep making the same mistakes. Like, it's just an absolute killer. And it leaves you feeling like we're 57 games in, like you know what you have. And at some point you can't just like assume it's going to change because it hasn't.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, the standings, the Bruins and the Rangers both wouldn't make the playoffs, which I like if you told me that before the season, I'd be pretty surprised if, I thought those teams were playoff teams this year. They fall out. As of right now, Columbus is ahead of the Bruins for like right outside the bubble, and Ottawa and Detroit are the two teams in the wild card. And you're right. It was a really tough way to lose the last two games because you lose against the Rangers, who you're directly in competition with for one of those wild card spots, and probably for the last one. And then you're leading multiple times in the game against Vegas, and you clearly have you have a good start. Some like production was there, and then there are some issues on the penalty kill, and honestly, Swayman had some faults as well on especially that goal that just kind of trickled through him from the side. I think it was Whitecloud's goal, and it just gets behind him. And I thought Peak saved it at first, but it ended up going over the line just enough, and it ends up being a bad goal. And I was at the end of the second period, really late in the period, and yeah, it was just that one for sure he should have had. And I know Ray Ferraro was like, yeah, that was weak. That was, not a good one. And he made some good saves too, though. And it's hard because you do need that one, and you need the penalty kill to be better. And they looked out of sorts at times. So yeah, tough to lose the way that they did to both of those teams. And then you hit the break, and during the broadcast they said there was a 20% chance the Bruins make the playoffs, but the main point was actually to demonstrate that it's gone up and down so much during the season that you shouldn't even look at it, because like at one point it was like back in November, right after they fired Cassidy, it was like at 20%.
Cassidy.
I said Cassidy. Oh my God. Of course I did, because it's on the mind. No, when they fired Montgomery, different coach that they fired recently. When they fired Montgomery, it was like 20%, and then it went up to 75%. Now it's back down to 20. It's probably below 20 now.
I think it's 15, right, Scott?
Yeah.
What was it?
Didn't you tweet out that it was 15 now?
Yeah, the playoff odds. Yeah, that's according to Money Pug, which isn't it. Their formula is not just like a simple mathematic formula. It weights the schedule and like opponents remaining. But yeah, like they have the Bruins down at 15% to get in.
And that's a time with 25 games remaining to have a 15. Let's call it 15 to 20% playoff odds. I will pay attention to that now, and I don't think there's not enough time now for it to keep fluctuating. And I think at this point, when you see that number, when you see those odds and you see the games remaining, it really is at this point, it's irresponsible to not accept the reality of what this team is. And as it pertains to trade deadline approach, and I agree with Scott. It doesn't have to be simply buying or simply selling. Like there could be a little bit of a combination, but it's about picking and choosing which players that you're going to sell. And look, when you, again, 25 games left, they are what the numbers are. Like I just said it earlier, but they're 25th in goal differential, 30th in the power play, 25th in the PK. I think Scott said last week they were like 31st in the league in like net special teams. Okay, so Brian, maybe their special teams just sucks. Well, yeah, that's true, but their 5-on-5 goal differential, I believe, is 18th in the league. So they just aren't. And I remember sitting here with you guys about a month and a half ago, and I posed the question to you guys. Are something along the lines of, are you guys fearful that the Bruins could be training their way out of the playoffs? And I was adamant that I was fearful, and the biggest reason was because of their special teams, and I just did not see their power play in particular, but both of them just flipping the switch like that, and it just hasn't happened. And it's a special teams league, so when you have the 18th 5-on-5 goal differential in the NHL, and you're penalty kill in your power play is bottom 6 in the league, then it's a recipe for disaster. If you have the 18th 5-on-5 goal differential in the league, but your special teams is middle of the pack, you're getting away with. You're fine. Like there are playoff teams that have a worse 5-on-5 goal differential than the Bruins, but their special teams are somewhat decent, and it's a special teams league. And what's the cause for that? Is it coaching? Is it lack of talent? I think it's a little bit of lack of confidence. It's a combination of all three, I would say.
Yeah, I've made this point before, but like you have to be really good at something. Like if you're right, because the end goal isn't just to make the playoffs. It's to have the potential to make noise. So like you can do that as a wild card team if you have something to cling to. Maybe you have elite goaltending. Maybe you're really good at preventing high danger chances. Maybe your special teams are really good, even if your 5-on-5 isn't. Like, if you have something you can cling to, you can say, well, we can lean on that, and like you can see a path towards success. The Bruins don't have any of it. Like, there's nothing. That month after Sacco took over, I had said like I wanted to wait things out and see more, because for a month there, they were doing a very good job limiting high danger chances at 5-on-5. And that has been predictive of playoff success in the past. So I wanted to see if they could keep that going. They didn't. In the month of January, it completely fell off a cliff. So like now there's nothing. If Swayman was having a Vezina caliber season and playing like Connor Hellebuck, I'd say, okay, hey, there's something to cling to. Like, yeah, the rest of your team's flawed, but you have one of the best goalies in the world. We know what that can do in the playoffs. Well, Jeremy Swayman's not playing like one of the very best goalies in the world. He's had some good stretches. I think he's been better since the turn of the new year. But he's still, like I still wouldn't consider him like one of the top 2 or 3 goalies in the world since January 1. Bridget, you're right. Like that second goal, the one late in the second, like that just can't happen. And Swayman said it himself after the game, not quite that harshly, but he said like, yeah, I saw it. I had it in my glove, and basically he just lost it as he tried to bring it into his body. Like, yeah, it shouldn't happen. And it's
showed
just
him. He's like laughing because he thinks he got away with it right at first, because they say no goal at first, and then he's like kind of laughing like, oh, that was a close one. Turned out it went in, so wasn't as funny. But yeah, it was like he knew that if it had gotten stopped by Peak, because if it had stayed out, it would have been because Peak got a stick there in time, not because Swayman covered it, right? Like that was what the close call was. So yeah, he knew that he should have had that. You could tell by the body language right away and the laughing that he was like, "Oh shit, that was bad." So definitely one that he would want back.
Can I ask you guys? Can I ask you guys a question on special teams?
No.
How, thinking like a little bit bigger picture, how would you try to fix it? Like, do you need to go out and get like an elite power play 1 guy to shake up the personnel? Do you need different coaches? Do you need to bring someone in like because you're right, Brian, like it hasn't changed all year. There's been no turnaround. There's been no come to Jesus moment. Like, so where would you start?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would probably take Elias Lindholm off the first power play unit. I think the puck kind of dies on his stick a lot of times on the power play. But that's not the maybe I'm incorrect by saying that's the first thing I would do. The first thing I would do is, I've said it all along, and every time they do it, they have success in the power play, whether it's offensive, like grade A chances, or they actually score. And that's moving David Pastrnak around outside of his one-timer position. Like when he's on a strong side, a lot more plays open up. And even when they put him in the bumper recently, and it opened up opportunities. But you got to move him around, and you got to move Marchand around. Like they just can't be on their off wall stagnant. The puck dies there because the Bruins don't have enough movement on the power play. They don't have enough true shot threats outside of Pastrnak, so no one's biting on McAvoy up top or whatever. So the first thing that I would do is I would change their look in the offensive zone. Like David can go on He can go on his offside and open up for a one-timer throughout over the course of 2 minutes, but he doesn't have to be there for the whole 2 minutes. And that's, to me, it drives me insane because I do see them put him on his strong side once in a while, and you see how much more dangerous the power play is, and then they just revert back to the same old shit. So that's the first thing I would do. And then, so why aren't they doing that often? Is it coaching? Like, is Chris Kelly doing a great job with it? Clearly not. So I think there's a lot of things. I think there's personnel issues, but I don't think the roster can address that right now because it is what it is. And then I think that the coaching is just reluctant to do what works, which is, like I just mentioned with Pasternak in particular, because the power play starts and ends with him. Most teams, it's the PP1 quarterback. For the Bruins, they don't have that guy right now. I mean, Lorai's okay at it. Lindholm's been hurt. Hampus Lindholm, that is. And Charlie's just not really – he has moments, but he's just not doing it enough. So the Bruins power play runs through Pasternak. And if it's going to run through him, then you have to get him moving around. And to me, like, their power play it's seemed pretty effective, actually, pretty dangerous when he is on his strong side and when he's moving around, and they just go away from it. And I don't understand why, when you have the 30th power play and you see something working and you stop going to it. It drives me fucking insane. I don't understand. That's what I would do, Scott. That's the first thing I would do.
To go back to the question though, like, was it that is your question, like, is the only hope getting like a little elite PP1 guy?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I'm like looking ahead a little to not just like, this season, because yes, I agree, like, that there's stuff they should be trying in season, but yeah, like, even like after the season, like, what,
Okay.
like the roster isn't going to dramatically change, but do they have to find someone? Like, I don't know, because it feels like they're at a loss in season is basically where I was going. And like, that's, I kind of think like I do think they're going to need fresh eyes on it, from a coaching standpoint, probably on both special teams units, honestly. And that's not, like, I'm not trying to call for anyone's job or anything. That they have an opening on the staff, so maybe, we know Zdeno Chara apparently has some sort of role. I still don't know if he's officially joined or not. Maybe he helps. Like, maybe he can be those fresh eyes. But yeah, like, to Brian's point, like, there seems to be this stubbornness to change anything for a prolonged period of time. Like, they change it in small doses, and then it always kind of goes back to the same thing. And so whether that's coaches just being stubborn, or they legitimately think that the thing they're going back to is the better option, like, they seem to be out of ideas is kind of where I'm at. And I don't think you don't get new ideas with the same people. So at some point, like, that's going to have to change.
Yeah, well, obviously they wanted Lindholm to be like the Bergeron replacement to, facilitate stuff through the middle and be someone that, you at least have to put a guy on him all the time because he's dangerous from there. And like that opens up Pasta and Marchand a little bit more. And that's just really not what has happened. Pasternak is still obviously your most dangerous power play weapon. Brazeau was doing a good job earlier in the year. Net front, they kind of haven't really seen that from him, and he also hasn't always been out there for the power play recently, or even in the lineup sometimes. But yeah, it seems like the easy answer would be that if you could add that kind of guy, of course, but how feasible is it? It's not, that's the problem. The feasibility of adding a guy that can help you there, because you already took a swing at it and it didn't work out yet with Lindholm. So Elias Lindholm. So,
well, I mean, even in addition to the power play, like, they're going to need a top 6 scorer, period. So like,
yeah,
you got to find some way to get one.
Yeah. I mean, I know we don't talk about it much, but like Jake DeBrusk did, was on the power play, not always on the first unit, a lot of times on the second unit, but he did do good things on the power play occasionally, and he also was a better scorer.
Yeah, I mean, they got to aim higher than that. Like,
No, but
you
just
got to
I'm
find a
saying
way
that
to.
they went. It feels like they maybe went
No,
back.
Bridget, you're right. Like you lose DeBrusque, and you definitely lose somebody that you saw have power play success. But I will say, and you're not doing this, Bridget, but I think this Bruins team offensively is so terrible that there's some revisionist history that DeBrusque was something that he wasn't his last year here. And his 22-23 season, I think he was on pace for like 60 something points. He was injured. He was awesome that year. But the year before that, and the year before, but from 2020 to then, he was struggling. So, but I'll say this: I think it's a personnel issue for sure, and it's not something that they can really address this year. I know people could say, well, the deadline's coming up. This is not a team that's buying rentals. I think with the current personnel they have, if they did things that I think they could do strategically, I think their power play could be better. I still think their ceiling with this roster is like 20 to 25 power play in the league, which still is going to be bottom third. I think if they want to be a top half power play in this league, they need more talent. I think strategy gets you so far, and it would get them better to than 30th or whatever. Yeah, the 30th. I think if they did certain things, they could be 25th, maybe 23rd to 25th. Not this year, but like in a full season. I think with more talent, they'd get to the top half of the league. That's my opinion. I don't know who that is. I mean, it's kind of it's a strange time in the season and to really kind of pinpoint who's available in the summer, but I think it's a personnel issue as well.
There was I think it was the Wednesday game on TNT. Maybe it was Saturday's game, so I apologize if it was ABC, but I think it was the TNT game. It was one of the national games. Pointed out on one of the Bruins power plays, like even just Elias Lindholm's spatial awareness, like he was holding the puck below the goal line, kind of off to the left side of the net, and if it was TNT, it might have been Brian Boucher made the point of like he has to take a couple steps forward, get in front of the goal line, and like then you're a scoring threat in addition to a passing threat. And like he made the point, he was like, where he's holding the puck right now, he can't shoot. Like he can't score in the goalie. So he's not a threat to do that. So like even that, and I know we're getting to the end here. I did want to plug before we go that we're going to be doing a mailbag some point later this week, day to be determined. We've already gotten a few questions in unsolicited, which is great. So we will make a call for more. You can email us skatepod@weei.com, tweet at us at the skatepod, or comment on YouTube.
Yeah, and Scott, that was I think that was Ray Ferraro who made that comment. I think
So it was. Yeah, so it was the ABC game.
Yeah, and yes, definitely submit questions, as Scott said. Scott, I do have a couple of extra minutes than initially planned for, so if you want to just wrap up quickly, we can do some thoughts on your opening shift because we didn't really get to that. So Emily Kaplan was talking about Brandon Carlo, Trent Frederic, Brad Marchand, Morgan Geekie as some names that you never know. Bridget, I know you mentioned you were surprised by Carlo because of the lack of because he has terms still, and I think that yes, Trent Frederic is an obvious one that if you're not going to re-sign him, he needs to go at the deadline for something, and this team is not good enough to keep their own rentals. I think the Bruins keeping their own rentals this year is almost as irresponsible as buying rentals from somebody else. The only difference is that you're not giving up an asset to maintain Trent Frederic. But as far as keeping somebody for a team that has a 15% playoff possibility right now, I think it's irresponsible. But I think you got to move on from him. But I said this to you guys recently, and maybe the Bruins end up with a top 10 pick anyway because they flounder this year. But I think that you could use Brandon Carlo or somebody with term like a Carlo or a Coyle to potentially package with your own first round pick, which is currently, I think, 13th based on points percentage. Maybe try to move into a late top 10 pick. We talked about that last episode. I'd be curious if they ended up moving somebody like Carlo with term at the deadline, what that would look like. But I think they're keeping their options open, and that's all that we're talking about that they have to do right now.
Yeah, and I think like that's where you're almost in you're in a good position, right? Like, obviously, if you're going to get anything for Trent Frederic, you have to trade him before the deadline. Same with a Justin Brazo. Technically, Morgan Geekie, you could also trade him in the summer because he's a restricted free agent, but usually it depends. Like, sometimes those guys don't bring as much back. You'd get more for him now when a team could get a playoff run out of him. But yeah, Carlo's interesting because you're right. Like, if you get blown away now, you can move him. If you don't, and an offer that you like isn't out there, then you hold on to him, and like you said, you revisit in the offseason. And then even then, you don't have to trade him. Like, I know. So when I tweeted out like the whole Emily Kaplan or quote about her in game report, some of the feedback was like moving Carlo would be a no brainer if they can get anything for him, and I I don't really agree that it's a no brainer. Like, I don't view him as a player where it's like, yeah, just dump the contract and move on. Um, Obviously he is having a down season, but I I've been on this train for a while. Like, I still think Brandon Carlo is a good defenseman when he's on his game, and I think we've seen that in recent years prior to this season. Um,
I agree
you
with
know,
that.
yeah, and like it does create a little bit of a hole in your lineup if you trade him. Now you're looking for a number 2 right shot defenseman behind McAvoy. I don't know if people think Andrew Peak is that. I am a bit skeptical. I think he's more of a third pairing guy like he's been. You don't really have any right shots coming up through the system. So it would open a hole that you'd have to find a way to address. Maybe there's a left shot you move over at, you could see, but I, I actually think like you're in a good situation there where you don't have to trade Brandon Carlo, but but you absolutely listen to offers, and if someone gives you like what you think is a good package right now, then take it.
Yeah, I think the reason why you're seeing the comments is because certain fans have turned on Brandon Carlo after this season and the performances that he's had. So maybe they're not thinking of him in the highest regard at this point. But uh yeah, I'm obviously, if you can get what you're looking for from him, for him, I should say, that you do it, because he's, like, to Brian's point, like, is it for a pick? Like, is that what you're after? Is it for, somebody that you're going to be able to control for a little bit longer? But that case, it would have to be a package where you send something else probably with Brandon Carlo, like whether it's Frederic or, like, if someone else wants one of your picks, I don't know. It's the one that it piqued my interest was, and it was how she phrased it too, right, Scott? It was that other teams are calling about Carlo, not. I don't think she phrased it like the Bruins are trying to get rid of, like, you know what I mean? Like, are trying to shop Carlo. It was like other teams are interested, and other teams are the ones approaching the Bruins about what it would take to get him. So clearly that means there is value to these teams, if multiple people are involved in asking. So maybe you do get a decent amount for him just based on the interest. If there's multiple teams that are interested, you might be able to get something that you need. So that's why I thought that one was interesting. And then also Geeky, because to me, I personally like Geeky for them to keep Geeky. At from who's been able to work well with Pasternak, Geeky has started to really show that those two can be on the same page, and scored again last game against Vegas. Almost scored twice on a rush with Pasternak as well. There was a great save by Samsonov that stopped it, but those two, I don't really want to separate them. I'm more interested in seeing if they can re-sign him in the offseason, as he's still got a little bit of team control as a restricted free agent. I think he would want to stay. I think he likes playing with Pasternak. But if you do trade him, like, he's at his highest value right now, and you also never gave up anything for him in the first place because he signed as a free agent. So like you'd be getting something where you never had to give up anything. They signed him on a 2-year, $2 million a year contract, and as a free agent. So it would turn out that you get value for him. That it's kind of a win-win, either whether they re-sign him or they get something for him, I guess, in that situation. But I personally would like them to keep him.
Yeah, I mean, I like what I see out of Geekie. My biggest thing with him is price, and can you guys really recall a stretch of hockey where Geekie produced with the Bruins, but not with David Pastrnak on his line? Like, and I asked that question because if you sign Geekie for an extension, is he gonna be with David Pastrnak on that line, despite their current chemistry? Do the Bruins pencil in him ideally as a first liner if they have 20 million in cap space to go out and get somebody else? I think, and this is not to slight Geekie, I just think that ideally you would probably want somebody that with a little bit more raw talent and skill to play with Pastrnak long term. And if that's the case, where does Geekie go in the lineup? And if that's down the lineup, where has he produced in the past in that role? And that I just think remains to be seen a little bit. But at the right price, and given the fact that Geekie is restricted, I'm not really trying to get rid of him necessarily at all. I have questions with him, and then one of them's price, and one of them is what he does on a Bruins roster as a third liner without Pastrnak or something like that. And then as far as Carlo goes, I don't think moving Carlo is a no-brainer at all. Again, it comes down to what's the return. I think if hypothetically, if you're sending Carlo in 14 to somebody for the 8th overall pick, to get a center prospect top 10 in the draft at the expense of Brandon Carlo, who I question, guys, if he's a top 4 defenseman on a contender right now, let alone next year and the year after when the league is getting even faster and more skilled. And it's kind of like a TV show ending at the right season as opposed to going 4 seasons too long. If you can move him now, you think of him more like I don't know what he looks like in 2 years because he's not looking good right now. And so I just, again, if the return is you get a top 10 center prospect right in your system, and there are some, I mean, obviously Higgins would be going, higher in the draft, but there are players in the scouting that are top 10 centers that you look at their highlights, you look at their OHL numbers, it's like you would fucking love to have that in your system. Okay, so Brandon Carlo has to move on. Like, that's the business. And we talked about before the episode, he's a great guy in the room. Teammates love him. And I said to you guys, if players that were great guys didn't get traded, nobody would ever be traded. And it's just, it's a shitty part of the business. But I think they really have to look at, you have to give to get. Do the Bruins want to get rid of Coyle? Do they want to get rid of Carlo? No. They probably don't want to do any of these things, but you have to make some tough decisions if it means it's in the best interest of the team long term. And I just think this is what they're weighing right now. And teams are calling, and they have to listen. Because with these players, guys, look where they are. You know what I mean? So this team can get better. You got to make some tough decisions potentially.
Right. That's exactly it. Like, and and again, like, even if you take off like the getting a top 10 pick, like even if that's not the scenario, you can bring in assets that you can then use in your retool on the fly or whatever you want to call it. Maybe that's another deal to bring in someone with term even before this deadline. Maybe it's an off-season trade. Like, that's part of what the Capitals did is, they're obviously, I've mentioned it before, but like they've been highlighted as kind of the golden example of the retool here in recent years. Well, the first round pick that they got from the Bruins for Dmitry Orlov, they didn't use the pick. They traded it to Toronto for Rasmus Sandin, a younger left shot defenseman who now is a legitimate top 4 defenseman for them. So it opens up that possibility too. But you can only do those things if you have the assets. And the Bruins have, I'd say, a few assets right now, but you can get more in some of these trades. So that's kind of, it just gives you more options.
Well, we'll see what happens. I just one thing that can't escape my mind, Bridget and Scott, is just that they are so close to naturally themselves being in the top 10 right now. Like that just doesn't happen every year with this Bruins team. When's the last time that they were this close to a top 10 pick and it wasn't a pick that they traded for in a prior year? Like obviously Sagan was second overall, but that was a trade. That was somebody else's original pick. So like we don't have to go through we don't have to go through this again. Like if they could just maybe find a way now, like it's naturally right there is what I'm saying. And anyway, on Twitter, by the way, Elliot Friedman is tweeting out some of the U.S. Canada lines. Quickly, Slavin, Fox, Werenski, McAvoy, Hanifin, Faber, Sanderson, the extra D. Forwards, Kyle Connor, Jack Eichel, Matthew Tkachuk, Jake Gensel, Austin Matthews, Jack Hughes, Brady Tkachuk, JT Miller, and Matthew Boldy. Nelson, Trocheck, Larkin, and Kreider rotating on that right side. So, and Canada's lines, Marchand was on the third line for Team Canada. So, yeah, it's gonna be a fun tournament.
Marchand was with Braden Point and Seth Jarvis. So that's Braden Point projected on pace for like 45-50 goals this season. Third line center.
Not a lot of height there, though. Not a lot of height on that line.
True. Seeing McAvoy with Werenski is interesting because I think Slavin Fox, like people have had penciled in for a while. I think everyone thought McAvoy was going to be Quinn Hughes' partner. And obviously now with Hughes out, you wondered where the U.S. would go on those pairings. But Werenski, McAvoy makes a lot of sense as well. Zach Werenski's having an awesome season. He's going to he's probably going to be a Norris Trophy finalist. I don't think I don't know. Maybe if Quinn Hughes misses time, it opens it up. But Zach Werenski's been great this year.
All right, Bridget Scott, thank you guys very much. Thank you all very much for listening. And we will
send us questions.
Send us questions, and we'll talk to you very soon. Hey, guys, thanks for watching this Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.